So this is something I wanted to stop and just jump into real quick. I came across this image because it's a screenshot on a YouTube video that I happened to come across. I don't know if it was the algorithms or I was listening to something and then went to the next one. And at the time, it resonated with me. If you are familiar with, the throat area as far as the chakra area, geometry, these are some of the some of the alternative or non-conventional information, insights, if you will, practices. Maybe that word comes to my mind in regards to what's going on in the world around us. For example, geometry and just the power of geometry in our everyday world that even I'm still learning and was not aware of. But we can do research on that. Various fields, around certain parts of our body. Maybe even going as far as, bringing our hands together and feeling a magnetism, if that's the word, happening. I'm not saying these things are right or wrong, but these are things that go on in our reality. And so these are things that I like to become aware of. And so saying all that to say, this was a YouTube video that I didn't look for, but these were various titles or words that, I have studied to some degree, and I've studied them individually. And then when you just go through life, you're able to put things together based upon the individual information that you've picked up. And so I'm not saying it's right or wrong or do it, don't do it. I'm just wanted to stop and just bring up something that was catching to me, and I just want to share it with you and get your thoughts, stimulate your mind, your perspective. Everything should be in love and in growth for us to become the best neighbor we can be for others, and also just as much as, if not more, for ourselves. And so I'm going to leave the link to the YouTube video if you want to take a look at it in more detail, but I want to really focus on the message real quick. Now, this message comes from, or the quote that caught my attention, and the quote comes from Ram Dass. I wasn't familiar with who Ram Dass was, and so I had to look him up. And what popped up was Ram Dass, American spiritual leader and guru. Ram Dass, also known as Baba Ram Dass, was an American spiritual teacher, guru of modern yoga, psychologist, and writer. His best-selling 1971 book, Be Here Now, which has been described by multiple reviewers as seminal, helped popularize Eastern spirituality and yoga in the West. And so I did want to low-key do some background research on Ram, just so I wasn't, I'm not speaking or delivering something or promoting something that may be harmful. I don't know. There's so many unique perspectives. All I'm saying is this is what caught my attention. And again, I want to just share it with you. And here's the quote. "The shadow is the greatest teacher for how to come to the light." The shadow is the greatest teacher for how to come to the light. And I'm not looking to talk, this is not a faith-based conversation at all. This is examining yourself. This is learning and growing and getting to become aware of yourself, love who you have been created to be, love, and the way you love yourself is by getting to know yourself. The way you love someone else is by getting to know them, to know their ups, their downs, their weaknesses and their strengths, and to be a support. How can you do that for others? You don't do it for yourself. So this is why it's powerful for me, because I wanted to stop and say, hey, we have to grow ourselves before we can do that for anybody else. If not, it won't be as effective. But at any rate, the shadow is the greatest teacher for how to come to the light. And what this means to me, this is why I want you to break it down to me. Let's talk about it. The shadow. When I think of shadow, I think of more of a darkness. I think of unknown. I think of maybe even uncertainty. These are all broad words, just things that come to my mind real quick. So the uncertainty, the unknown, the darkness, that part is the greatest teacher. Not just the teacher, but the greatest teacher. That unknown, that uncomfortability, that what if, or that lack of knowledge, that ignorance, that these are just words that come to my mind when I think of shadow. And I'm not saying these are not negative words, but ultimately the hidden, the private, when I'm thinking of those things. So that what can't be seen or is harder to see, that's very broad. If you want to talk about this in more detail, we can break each one of those words down. Just leave it in the comments if you want to talk about them. But these are all the things that come to my mind. And everyone, the more you research and study things, the more those words or symbols have more than one meaning. So you can look at a sentence and look at it 4 to 1,000 different ways if you know 4 to 1,000 different meanings to that word or to that symbol, if you will. So the shadow is the greatest teacher. The behind the scenes, if you will, the corner, hidden, darkness, unaware, is the greatest teacher for how to come. Now, so we think that we're automatically there, we're automatically going to get there. But when I look at how to come, that means you have to take those steps. It's a process, and you have to put the work in to some degree. It makes me think of faith without works is dead. So the challenges, that's another word for shadow. It comes to my mind. The challenge, the unaware, the unknown, the lack of evidence, the private, the hidden, the darker side, the unseen is the greatest teacher for how to grow and build into the light. Now, again, this is not faith-based, but when I did some research way back when, I came across light, and to some degree that word meaning information. And when you look at information is basically the awareness, the introduction to knowing. You can't know what you don't know, and ultimately what you don't know becomes information that you do know. So it's a lack of information. This kind of goes in, it's deep because you kind of, I don't want to go there, but ultimately it's a lack of information. So basically the shadow, I'm trying to see how to put that together, because the shadow is the greatest teacher for how to come to the light, how to get the information. And so I almost want to say the uncomfortability, the unknown, the challenges, the private information, the hidden information, the work is the greatest teacher to you becoming aware, to you reaching something, to you becoming something. And I'm going to take it a little step further when I remember the passage, I'm the way, the truth, and the light. I'm not saying, I'm leaving it there. I'm not saying it no more than, but when you look at those words, I'm the way, the truth, and the light, no one except through me, I am the way, the truth, and the light. And meaning I am the information because, I am the information because it was the information that you received that now made you aware of, what you can or are supposed to do from that perspective, if that makes sense. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. Let me know what you think. Just something to stimulate our minds. See you in the next video.